Welcome to this explainer. You know that feeling when you walk from a perfectly cool, comfortable living room straight into a bedroom that feels like a literal sauna? It's the absolute worst. Uneven heating and cooling can be so frustrating. Well, today we're pulling directly from expert HVAC insights to decode the mechanics of zoning systems. We're going to figure out together how these systems can help you finally take control of those stubborn temperatures and honestly, whether they actually make sense for your specific home.
So let's start with that highly relatable pain point. Why is one room an oven while another's an icebox? You're constantly battling the thermostat. You turn the AC way down just so you can sleep comfortably upstairs, but now the downstairs feels like an absolute freezer. Why does this happen? Well, usually, standard HVAC systems treat your entire house like one giant room. They just push air out uniformly, completely ignoring the fact that different rooms have totally different cooling and heating demands.
Okay, let's run through our diagnostic checklist to see if your place is actually a good candidate for this kind of upgrade. We'll be looking at 1. The zoning concept. 2. Hot and cold spots. 3. Adapting to schedules. 4. Tricky layouts. 5. What zoning can't fix. And 6. Making the decision.
Section 1. The zoning concept and targeting your HVAC needs.
So, what are we actually talking about here? Instead of that one-size-fits-all approach that conditions every single room identically at the exact same time, zoning physically divides your home up. It breaks it into separate areas, or zones. And here's the real game changer. Each one gets its own thermostat. By doing this, the system directs heated or cooled air precisely where it's needed. It's a completely targeted approach. And that can massively improve your overall comfort, reduce wasted runtime, and finally smooth out those stubborn hot and cold spots.
Moving right along to Section 2, hot and cold spots, and fixing those imbalances. The absolute key word to remember here is persistent. Zone control makes the most sense when your comfort problems are consistent, not just a random occurrence. Think about a living room that gets completely baked by the afternoon sun, right? Or maybe you have a bedroom over an uninsulated garage that's just consistently chilly. Or, and this is incredibly common, upper floors that stay significantly hotter than the lower levels all summer long. Zoning lets you correct these built-in imbalances without accidentally turning the rest of your house into an icebox. You just target the problem area.
All right, Section 3, adapting to schedules, looking at occupancy and time.
This is where things get really smart. Zoning becomes incredibly valuable when you use different parts of your home at totally different times. Like, if you work from home, you're probably in your office all day, right? Meanwhile, the bedrooms are just sitting there completely empty. With zone control, you intelligently condition the occupied spaces during the day and dial it back in those empty rooms. Not only does this potentially lower your energy bills, but it vastly improves your perceived comfort exactly where you happen to be spending your time.
Section 4. Tricky layouts and what we call separate worlds. Ask yourself, does your home have a separate world for heating and cooling? Large open-plan rooms usually behave themselves, but what about multi-story homes or long hallways that experience massive pressure drops from one end to the other? Even properties with winged layouts can create these distinct, uneven airflow and thermal loads. They basically create little microclimates inside your house that really struggle to stay stable.
So if your system is completely struggling to push air to those distant wings or upper floors, zoning can precisely target the airflow right to the zones crying out for it. If you're dealing with a system that's turning on and off rapidly, which is known as short cycling, or if the temperature keeps drifting, zone dampers actually step in to help. They tailor the airflow perfectly to match the indoor demand of that specific, separate world, stabilizing everything.
Now for Section 5, what zoning can't fix, because it is definitely not a universal fix. Time for a crucial reality check. Zoning is not a magic wand. Adding zones requires some really careful equipment compatibility. In fact, if a zoning plan is poorly matched to your house's specific layout or your existing equipment, it can literally make things worse. You could end up with a much noisier system, major static pressure problems in your ductwork, or even a severe drop in your overall efficiency. Nobody wants that.
The big takeaway here is that zoning is amazing at managing comfort differences, but it's never, ever a substitute for fixing fundamental problems. If your real issue is terrible insulation letting heat escape, drafty windows and doors, an improperly sized HVAC unit, or ductwork that's leaking air like a sieve, zoning won't solve your problem. If your system is fundamentally mismatched to your home's load to begin with, zone control is just a band-aid. You absolutely have to fix those foundational elements first.
Finally, Section 6, making the decision. Is zoning actually worth it for you?
Let's walk through a really clear decision-making path here. Step 1.
Start by measuring your symptoms. Are we talking about recurring complaints, clear time-of-day imbalances, or big seasonal differences between floors? Step 2. Compare those genuine, persistent headaches against the cost and complexity of a zoning installation. And Step 3, you absolutely have to consult a professional to evaluate your existing ductwork and equipment. The case for zoning only really holds up if multiple rooms act completely differently for long stretches of time.
When you do bring in a pro, make sure they explain the entire design approach to you. A truly quality zoning plan has to meticulously account for some pretty complex metrics, like airflow rates, static pressure, and exactly how your specific furnace or air handler is going to interact with the new zones. It takes expert precision to make sure you get the comfort you're paying for without creating those awful noise or pressure issues we just talked about.
Which brings us to our ultimate takeaway. If you've got real, persistent temperature differences across your house or your daily schedule, zoning can absolutely deliver a smarter, much more consistent level of comfort than a one-size-fits-all setup. But it leaves us with one incredibly important question to ponder. Are your home's temperature differences consistent enough to justify taking control, evaluating your layout, and finally making the leap to upgrade your everyday comfort?